show. There it
Oh, we're
goes.
live. We're live.
Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. It's 8 p.m. Eastern. And tonight is the fart show. We're talking about times when
Sasquatch farts. It's paranormal.
Sasquatch fart show. One time, my friend Blake Downing claims he heard someone let a fart out, and he called it ribbing a fart during the show. He goes, "Did Beazle rib a fart during the show?" It's like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, Beazle said it was a chair, so I was like, sure. But that's what's happened in the last few minutes. But the name of the show is Stephanie Quick Saves the Show. That's the title. Stephanie Quick Saves the Show tonight. Yeah. Basically, a Navajo lady, Erica Elliott, was supposed to come on about Navajo teachings, and she got laryngitis really bad. And she's coming on in January, so she'll be back at least. There's a cool picture on the site right now of her as a teacher and all the kids from her school and stuff back in the day. It looks like the Wild West or something. But you listen to United Public Radio 107.7, New Orleans. We got 2 more shows left. Stephanie Redfeather, and then this doctor lady next week on Paranormal. And did you get the empath cards, Wham?
I did get the empath cards, Wham, yes.
Have you used them? I haven't seen mine.
I haven't. No, I just looked at them and went, "Oh, these are empath cards." And Alan looked at them and said, "Oh, these are colorful." And I read the book and thought, "Okay, I don't really use cards for anything, so you know."
We'll try to on January. I don't. It'll be her, but I haven't got it yet. The box is at my mom's, so I'll just pretend.
Actually, the truth is that I got 2 boxes. I don't know why. So I might have gotten your box.
I don't know. Sometimes they mess up.
Yeah, I got 2 boxes, and I'm like, I'm not use the one. I'm certainly not going to use 2. So I don't know. I'm probably going to.
I'll let you know.
Present.
If I don't see mine, I'll let you know. But I know they. I think they just did it. Probably just did it by accident. Sent you 2. I'm sure I have mine somewhere. Well, what have you been up to, Stephanie? Farting?
Well, of course not. I'm a lady.
Oh, you never farts, right?
Well, first of all, it's interesting that you brought that up because I am going to be I've been researching a show on humor in the paranormal, which I think will be fun. And with Matt Hopewell or AP Strange, we're going to be on with Rojan Razorwire on Project Archivist, recording later this month. And our erudite, academic, and very intellectual research has led us to the whole aspect of farting in the paranormal and humor. So we'd actually been on this topic, and
this is the level to which we have sunk.
Well, I ended up because I was thinking about, for example, Carlos. I don't want to get too deep into this and blow it because Rojan's always saying save it for the show. But as a little teaser for people, I'm very interested in Carlos Castaneda because he's incredibly influential, even though he was pretty messed up in a lot of ways. Anyway, so I was thinking about humor and spiritual teachers, and there's, good reasons to use humor. And so I had remembered reading this book called The Harmonious Circle by James Webb, which was published many decades ago. And he's talking about G.I. Gurdjieff, the great mystical teacher of early 20th century, and a lot of his disciples, his teaching methods, and how his just looking at his life history, what he can find, spiritual antecedents and stuff. And I remembered that there was this great anecdote about one of his students was an older woman, and she was kind of a battle axe. And so there was an incident where he wanted to, there was some kids or something around there that were part of the whole community. It was a whole community of spiritual seekers, and Gurdjieff was the leader and the guru. And for whatever reason, they were having tea. Now, instead of just kind of like passing the tea around or whatever, she was doing this thing where she'd stand up and pour the tea and then present it to the people by bending over. And every time she bent over, she'd toot, right? So everyone's like sitting there trying to like keep a straight face. But what made it worse is she'd kind of toot. You say, "Oh, pardon me." Oh, so everyone's trying to keep a straight face. So Gurdjieff starts getting like real mischievous, and he starts complimenting her on not only does she have this amazing ability to make this sound, which is kind of like a toy trumpet or something, but then she has this incredible politeness and grace with which she, accepts this thing, and how refined and ladylike her farting is, because you have to really keep her. And so by then everyone's just like busting up, and she takes it all in good humor. And so what it ended up doing was a lot of the people that were kind of chafing under her leadership, they got a lot more affection for her because of her frailty was shown, but then she was a real good sport about it, right? So I thought this is a great anecdote for showing how humor can be used in this type of spiritual development setting to help people get a different perspective and feel more charitably towards one another, and that type of thing. And so I spent like all day looking for this, and I finally found this anecdote. And then, as it turned out, the next day a show happened, and I'll leave it up in the air so people will listen to our show. But there was a big stink about that, and so it's funny that you brought this up too, because I was reading this book, The Harmonious Circles, like 550 pages.
A big stink.
Yeah. A big stink.
A big stink.
And so I was reading like 300 pages of this book, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I spent literally all day in Googling, and I was talking to my friend Alex. I'm like, Alex, how can I find this without this editing? So I finally found it. Then I had a big stink. And then today you're bringing it up too. So it seems to be, shall we say, in the air. You are a hard crowd, you two.
What? No.
Harmonia. I'm looking up the Harmonious Circle. It's by James Webb.
Yes.
Is it by James Webb? Okay, I was looking it up.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He did a lot of primary research as far as primary documents, letters, and he spoke to a lot of people who had studied with Gurdjieff or with Gurdjieff's primary students, like J.G. Bennett, Uspensky, Oraj, and all those type of people. So if anyone is interested in Gurdjieff and his influence, it's really an excellent resource, and very well written too. A lot of anecdotes, so it's nice.
Trying to count down the good times.
My husband's busting me for laughing too much. I told him you could come in, but we're going to be live on air, so no swearing.
No F words.
Oh, okay.
There are certain kinds of swear words that we can use.
Oh, I didn't realize there'd been advances in the FCC position on the 7 dirty words.
You could say puss toot. Puss toot or fart box. I think you can.
Thankfully. God bless America.
I've never gotten in trouble with saying them. Well, basically, the situation I'm in right now is with Christina is a hellish situation. We have 30 days or less to get out of this house after giving hospice care to her grandmother, and her grandmother transitioned, and then we were taking care of the mother. The mother got out of control and wanted more, help, to a point of she's basically the type of person that loves help a little too much. It's great to help people, but she we got her a refrigerator and some food and stuff so she could get to it in her room. It's almost like she was offended because she'd rather just have the help than just be able to get stuff herself. And she has health trouble and stuff, but she can still do stuff. But anyway, it got into an ordeal where there was a big fight. The mother left, and the son took her to Arizona, and basically we're stuck here in a house that was promised to Christina only verbally, so I'm not sure if there's any legal options. But basically we have until January to get out, and has the gall to have me messing with the real estate guy the whole time. Like I'm supposed to be like, oh, hey, how you doing? So I've just been ignoring him,
That's the worst, is when people are just like more or less, cutting you off at the knees, but yet you're supposed to still be helping them with all these extraneous projects. That's ridiculous. I mean, if
Yeah,
she
but
wants to,
I'm ignoring him.
I'm
Just
sorry.
ignoring him. I'm ignoring him. There's been no eviction notice or anything yet. So the big thing is when she shuts the power and stuff off, what she claims is on for December, but January she could do it. So trying to figure stuff out before then, or if there's an easier way to keep it on. And I told her stuff about. I had said something about we needed more time and text to her tonight. She goes, "I'll call the police." Like just mean. And I was like, well, fuck the whoops, f the police. And basically
You did it yourself.
said, I know, basically said we'll have to evict the squatters or something. But anyway, yeah, and there I go doing it, but just exhausted. There's no JoJo here to help me.
It's Fork.
Gone.
That's right.
He's gone. He went to the heavenlies. But the thing is, I mean, a month, that's not long. And then there's a lot of stuff in here. She just like left a ton of stuff here, like nice furniture and stuff that belonged to her mom and husband, and even left her husband's ashes. And we said that you left your ashes. She's like, no, that's not them. They're in the ocean. We know it's her husband's ashes.
Oh, wow.
It's weird. It's just a horror movie.
It sounds to me like all the weird crap that you've been having in your house.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like she might have been the origin of it.
That's what Michelle Desrochers and everyone else said, that she was the pivot of it because if she had mental illness. And they did a reading, Michelle Desrochers and Emily Pisano or whatever, and they said that she definitely had a lot of activity because of her mental states. Even said that they seen gray aliens and stuff around her that would come in and out. And we saw weird stuff like that here too ourselves. So she's gone now, and but it's still just weird because now you got to get out in a month. It's just odd. It's tiring for sure. So just looking at different things from RV to house to whatever. It's just a crazy situation. But yeah, there were ghost things here. Something hit our bed one night, and there was a glass that broke. There was different weird stuff for sure. That was strange. This house is kind of weird. It's a weird shape. It's on strange land that used to be native burial mounds, I was told, and possibly the uncle may have disturbed them across the lake and all this crazy stuff. So there's a lot of different stuff for sure. So, Stephanie, did you ever get Pentagons? I mean, skinwalkers at the Pentagon?
No, I didn't. I don't know. It's been kind of a little hectic here recently too, and I don't know. I just haven't been able to do a lot of reading, well, except for the Gurdjieff stuff. And I don't know. For me personally, I'm just not as interested in the whole kind of CIA remote viewing Pentagon angle of things. But did you read Skinwalkers at the Pentagon?
I haven't read it yet. I have it, but I've heard some radio shows on it and stuff. I'm more interested in what happened to the personnel supposedly when they came home and stuff like that and things like that. One of the weirdest things, though, I know Bigelow always has his hands all over it, but that guest last week, Jesus Payon Jr., I had told you, he said in the middle of that show, and this is the dude from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, he was like, I've been on a UFO. And I was like, what did you say? He goes, I mean, I've heard people say, I just wasn't expecting an actor to come out with that and say it. He's like, I've been on a UFO. And I go, well, tell us more about that. He goes, well, after it happened, Robert Bigelow contacted me, wanting me to draw the propulsion systems the next time that happened. And that never happened. But I got all these weird calls. And this dude seems like very legit, like very down to earth. And he gets some Bigfoot footage that's amazeballs. But that was just one of the weirdest parts of that interview. I've been on a UFO, which I mean, I've seen a ton of them. I don't know if I've been on them.
Well, there's a lot of people that think they have. There's a lady, I don't know why, I read her blog quite a while for a number of years, and she, I enjoy her. Her name's pen name is Lucretia Hart, and her it's like a live journal blog called At Spiral's End. But she is like been a practitioner, and she's very experienced with various states of consciousness, and has had a lot of alien contact. And it's interesting to me, like she's the type of person. It's like, oh, the first time that I was astral projecting or having an out of body experience. It's just I'd already read about them before, and so all of a sudden I knew what it was, and I had like lucidity and agency, and she's practiced various forms of like esoteric or occult practices, so she's very used to meditation, what it's like to lucid dream versus astral project. And what's interesting to me is that she is very much able, through her experiences, which have happened over multiple decades, to distinguish between this was like an astral abduction, like I'm being abducted by these beings that I know who they are, but I know it's on the level of like the astral, versus like, okay, they came to the front door, knocked on the door, and had us walk out the back to where the, frankly, physical UFO was parked out back. And so I thought that was very interesting, because I think a lot of people, especially if they, you're suddenly, you haven't really done much of anything, you just kind of led a mundane life, and then suddenly you're seeing this bright light, and there's the craft, and you're like, these people are, their brains are just blown open with these hugely altered states of consciousness. And so I think it's very difficult to kind of tease that apart. But then she has had these ongoing experiences combined with her meditation and occult practices, where she's able to very clearly distinguish how these things are separated. And I thought that was so wild, because I think a lot of people get it you'll think, first of all, okay, it's like a tin can from Mars with these creatures on it coming down and doing stuff here, right? Then yep, exactly. Then later on you think, well, all this weird stuff, I don't want to swear, is going on, and there's a lot of telepathy and synchronicity and PK and all these things that happen. You're thinking it looks to be very much something that's happening on this, like the non-physical, as we understand it, levels, right? Mm-hmm. But then it's kind of like this weird, like if you look at someone like Jacques Vallée, he's looking at it and he's like, this is the thing, it's happening on all these levels at once, right? You have the PK, you also have these, physical traces of something really big with a lot of energy having been in this space at this time, where these people are having this weird experience. And Lucretia Hart seems to have this same type of understanding of it. That it's like almost like from the mythic through the astral, through like kind of the psychokinetic, telepathic, and then, frankly, physical, levels. And I don't think a lot of people, it's hard to wrap your mind around in a way. But if you look at something like the computer, right? It's a thing, like your laptop. It's made by like mining chemicals and doing these physical processes, but then it's used to create these images, that can tap into, myth and, affect people on the subconscious level. And so I think that in a way, the UFO is probably something like, well, it's like Vallée's idea of the UFO as a projector, kind of, right? That type of a thing. But I thought that, she was very interesting on that way. And then you have someone like Jesus Payon, who's like, well, I was on a UFO, and she, is someone who's had like a ton of experiences of where it's just paranormal abduction. But then she's also, sometimes if they need to, it'll be just like the tin can coming down and the beings coming and grabbing you and walking you out back. You wake up with, wet grass all over your feet and your pajamas on backwards. So
yeah, that is weird when that happens.
Yeah, I personally have not, I think I've ever had any type of contact with like the aliens. I've never seen a craft. I've never seen a light in the sky that I can't identify. I've seen some weird stuff. One time I saw something and I thought it was really unusual, a light in the sky. And I was talking to my brother, and he actually is retired Air Force. They used to do, we have those big like 737s that fly around with like that mile long antenna, and they're monitoring like what the Russians are saying and stuff like that. So he did that. And he said, I think you saw a U-2 coming in to land north of here. and which was something I never would have expected to see or to have him say. But then, he actually, this is what he did for a long time. He knows the flight paths, he knows how they look and all that type of stuff. But I've never seen anything that would be unexplained that way. But I know a lot of people have. So,
I've only ever had one really weird experience that has correlates with the whole abduction thing. And I can't explain it. I don't know what it was.
yeah.
It was kind of a simple, compared to some people's experiences. I was living in this basement apartment. I had just started working on the classwork for my PhD. All right. And I was having kind of a hard time in my life, but at that point in my life, I was, if you're in a PhD program, you're always having a hard time in your life. That's just sort of goes with all of that. And I remember that there were occasions when I felt really sort of weird and uncomfortable about just going to bed. I would sort of get creeped out because I lived in the basement apartment. It was the only basement apartment. So it was kind of isolated from the rest of the building, or the rest of where the rest of the residents were. And so this one night I decided that I would turn the TV on. I had the TV at the time, and I would turn the TV on low, and I would sleep with it because it was in the other room. So I would leave the television on low, and I would leave like one light on, and I would go to sleep that way. Are you there? What happened?
I don't know. I can hear you.
Okay, I just see Jeffrey's face. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I did something.
We can hear you.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Anyway, that was just startling. Anyway, I remember I went to sleep. I went to sleep with the TV was on low, and there was a light on in the other room, and I went to sleep. At some point, I woke up, and I had one of those weird experiences where I know some people recognize this, where I wake up and I know that something's going on. The only thing I can remember is that there seemed to be this weird green light in the other room, but I couldn't tell whether it was something on the TV or what. And I kind of got, and inexplicably, I just went back to sleep. That's the thing. It's like I woke up and I felt like something weird was going on, and I went right back to sleep. And then I woke up the next morning much later than I usually wake up, but I felt really groggy, like I hadn't really slept, which was kind of weird. And then I sat up in bed and I noticed that there was just something was wrong. And what was wrong was I had been wearing a nightgown because it was like winter and it was cold down there because it was the basement. And I had been wearing a nightgown. That's what I had worn to bed. The nightgown was off. And the reason this is important is because it had this little tiny neck that was actually kind of hard for me to get off. I had to sort of wrestle it over the top of my head. But it was off. And not only was it off, it was folded at the foot of my bed. Now, see, anybody who knows me knows that folding clothes is against my religion. I do not fold my clothes. I do not even fold my clothes to put them in my drawers. I just shove them there, So, and then, I felt, and it was like my right hip felt sore. And I remember I kind of looked down and right at the level of right in my inner thigh of my right leg.
Oh,
there were like 4 spots that looked just like fingers.
Yep.
Like right there. And then the entire, this is maybe a little TMI, the entire, my inner thighs on both sides had some kind of gelatinous fluid that was not
goo.
That was
space goo. Yeah.
That was not mine. Yeah. And when I realized all this, I got really, really angry. I mean, I didn't get scared. I got really pissed off. And I remember I got out of bed and I went to the other room and I like shut, everything off. And I stood in the middle of the room and I just sort of like started yelling at whatever it is and just said, "You will never do this again. Fuck."
This is the F-bomb show.
We can call it the F-bomb show. And I just like went off, and it's never happened again.
Good.
So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that was. I felt kind of out of my body for the entire day. It took a while for me to sort of feel normal in my own body. I felt like I was drugged, is what it felt like.
That is so creepy. First of all, the whole thing with the clothes is like the first time that I saw a picture of Betty Hill's dress that had been torn when they had their experience. And it creeped me out partly because when I was younger, there was a lot of more vintage clothing available that we wear for every day or for costumes and stuff. And the dresses back then, like the 50s and 60s, were very well made and they had very densely woven thick material. It was not like floaty boho stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, it would take a lot to tear that, which is, just like the violence. It just gave me chills. But when you're talking about the anger, and I mean, I have to say that your experience is pretty typical of a lot of people that have that. I mean, it's pretty standard. And it's creepy. I mean, it's like when they talk about CPS. If you get like kids that have bruises on their inner thighs, there's not a lot of ways that that's going to happen without, someone getting up in there, unless they're like riding a bike and falling off or something like that. Right. If they're too small for that. But one of the things that struck me, and I know we've spoken about this before with Paula Gunn Allen in her book Pocahontas, because she talks about the phenomena of mythology worldwide and the whole idea that there are certain times when, things will be stable for a while and then it's like a changing time and the old order is headed out and the new order is headed in, and how so many times this is heralded by the abduction of a charismatic, magical woman, right? Like Helena Troy, Lady Rebecca, or Pocahontas was abducted. All these other things. It's a very fascinating book if people want to read it. But I thought, because looking at me, all the weird experience I've had, my interests, various psychic experiences or paranormal, however you want to call them, I would be the type of person you would really expect to have reported some type of like alien abduction experience in my life. I've had nothing like that. However, it's fascinating because you talk about that anger. I felt that anger too, but it was because several times when I was growing up in the greater San Francisco Bay Area during like the 70s, and there was a lot of creepy, whack job, pedophile, awful people there. And there were several times when I would be like just out as a girl, just like 8 years old, 13 years old, walking around and have grown men in their cars following me and trying to abduct me, right? Get in the car, little girl, get you a milkshake, all this type of stuff. And I remember that the one that was the worst for me, I just had that same feeling of anger because I realized that basically I had to get away physically or it didn't matter what I thought, what I wanted. I was not a person. I was just like an object for whatever this, And it was the same, just like rage. And luckily a schoolmate's mom came in and offered me, I didn't know it was his mom. I didn't know who this woman was, but I got in her car because I was trying to get away from this guy. And so I thought that was interesting how it's just the whole phenomenon of abduction shows up. It's kind of like it doesn't even, it's there even if it like just the threat of it or in physicality or mythically. I was on Project Archivist with Tui Snyder, who's a cemetery historian, and she's a real great storyteller and just a real sweet, sparkly, bubbly person. But she also has a lot of these very interesting experiences. She's had a lot of interesting experiences with like initiation through the elements, She was telling this one story about being a little girl camping in, I think, the Southwest with her family, and she ended up climbing up in this tree and had this experience of like the wind from that area kind of coming up and kind of like looking at her and kind of is saying hello. It's just a charming story. But she, as a young girl with one of her friends, they were out in a cemetery, and the janitor from there or whatever was trying to, like, chasing them, physically running after them through the cemetery, and they managed to escape. But again, she hasn't had any alien abduction, but they had this attempted abduction in the cemetery. So I don't know what any of this means, but it's fascinating when you find these themes through myth, and then, you know, these same patterns, you know, and symbols show up in, like, you know, regular people's lives that are, you know, dealing with these same things. I don't know what it means.
Well, that's interesting, or attempted abduction, or just weird stuff. Because if you remember when I did the presentation last year, when we all, not the presentation, but when you and I and Smiles all together, and Ben talked about Eugenia.
Yes.
And I gave sort of the rundown of her life, you know, the biography of her. And the two of the events that stood out in her mind as being sort of formative events that she had no idea what they meant. Both of them involved some kind of weird proto or possible abduction experience. You know, like in the first case, there was that guy that approached her when she was small, you know, maybe 12 years old, in a park up in upstate New York. And now, while he didn't attempt to abduct her, his whole behavior towards her would be suspicious now. I mean, who knows if it was then, but it would be now.
Yeah.
And she took that in a very interesting way. You know, she took it as the first time that someone had approached her as an individual person separate from her family.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, her experience of it was interesting. And then there was that other experience when she was just out of college, and this was in Wisconsin, I believe, and she was working for a newspaper reporting service, you know, a news reporting service. And she was on the bottom, you know, the bottom floor of an apartment building, basically. And
like kind of like the basement a little bit, right?
Right, except it wasn't in the basement. But she heard this noise outside, and she looked and she saw this car drive up, or maybe it was two cars drive up, and it looked sort of like a police car, but not really. It was like the wrong color. It was like this weird beige color, and there was a light on top that it was not quite right. And out of both cars poured these people who sort of had a military affect, you know, and they obviously had uniforms on, but they were the uniforms were khaki in color, and they were not anything she was familiar with. They were, because she came from a military family, so she
would know. Yeah.
was familiar with like dress military stuff and all that. And it wasn't like any of that, and it wasn't regular police. And they fanned out around her apartment, the bottom of the apartment, and started like looking in her windows and stuff.
Oh, that's so creepy.
It like completely freaked her out, and she ran into this back, I don't know if it was a bedroom or just a back room, where there was like a sofa, and there was a telephone there, and she was going to call the police, the actual police, because she knew these weren't the police, right?
Yeah.
And so she was there on the couch with this pillow, and she was using the pillow to try to cover up the telephone,
to muffle it. Yeah.
And she noticed as she was doing that she noticed the shadow of a guy looking in the window there. And she couldn't really see him because of where she was. She was sort of up against it, right? But apparently he could kind of see where she was. And she overheard him say, "Oh, it's all right. She's just in there making love to her pillow." Isn't that bizarre? And then they just left. It was like that was the signal, and they all just left. And she said she just sat there like for a long time going, what was that? What does this even mean? You know, because they were by him saying that, they were clearly indicating they were looking for her.
And that they could tell what she was doing. Yeah.
They know what she was doing. But what does that mean? And to this day, she has. I mean, to the day she died, she had no idea.
To this day, maybe now she's
no idea. But she regarded that as one of the pivotal experiences that encouraged her to move back east.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she remembered that as being something that encouraged her to go back to school and get a PhD or something.
Bless you.
Drama.
Well, it's weird too, because it's kind of like, especially, I don't know, I'm like on a Jacques Vallée terror tonight, but he talks a lot about the nonsense logic of a lot of these things, and that's very much in the vein of that the nonsense logic, and it's like very kind of sexually threatening,
right?
And
sexually threatening or suggestive. You know, making love to her pillow. What the hell does that mean?
Trying to get into your private space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very. I mean, you know, I've had experiences where it's been very clear, and I've talked about them on the show before, where something has come into my rooms. You know, like the first time I ever did a Naga ritual, it was like maybe a night or two after I did it. I woke up. And I sleep in my closet, sleep in my bedroom, which is over there. You can, but I'm in my office right here. But my office has got a window that looks out over the backyard, which is where I do all my stuff. And I woke up suddenly and knew that something was in my rooms. But it was this office. They weren't in my bedroom. And I was awake. I was completely awake. I was not half awake. I had sat up, and I distinctly heard a voice in here, my office, say, apparently to someone else, "This is where she lives." Just like that. This is where she lives. And out loud, I said, "Get out!" Just like that. I just said, "Get out!" And they did.
Well, that's good.
You know, it's like, because that's my reaction. It's like, don't scare me in the middle of the night. Just don't do it, you know? And I've always sort of been like that. I remember once I lived in this apartment in this not great part of town with my partner at the time. And in the middle of the night, we were awakened by some crazy person pounding on our door, bam, 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 you know, just really, really hard like that. And I went up and I got up and I yelled at him, and it's like, you know, what do you want, you know? And they're like, and it was very clear that they were drunk, and it was very clear that they thought somebody else lived there, you know, because it was an apartment building, and so we yelled back and forth for a while. And because we did, you know, we held back and forth for a while. And this person was clearly drunk and not believing me. And I finally just said, you know, I mean, a few expletives, right? I was like, I don't care if you believe me or not. You're going to, you know, or I'm going to call the police. So, you know, but I mean, I can be very aggressive. I'm not going to say what I said to listen to the F show. But it was like, I was extremely aggressive. And somehow when I do that, people believe me. I don't know why. I mean, I guess they could have kicked the door down, but they didn't.
That's good. Well, okay, this is not anything paranormal, but it's just making me think of a friend that I had from way back when in high school. And this is just a funny anecdote. Well, to me, it's funny. You'll probably crack up, because if you've lived in these kind of dicier areas around, let's say, drinking establishments, you know how things can go. Anyway, it was in the early 80s, and he was, my friend Joe, he's gay, and he was living in an apartment on the ground floor with a couple other guys, and they were like right around the corner from the Stud, which is like the super famous gay bar in San Francisco, which is actually, I don't know, I haven't been there in a ton of years, but I always had a good time. We'd go there sometimes and everything. It was very popular, and this was really before AIDS had hit. So, there's a lot of activity, a lot of guys and stuff. Anyway, so the living room, the front door in this apartment opened into the living room, and there was like a couch right across from the front door, and the front door had a mail slot in it. So Joe used to nap on the couch, and he said, he'd find out that the people, like, he would wake up because he thought someone was looking at him, and there'd be like someone would had opened the mail slot, and they'd be looking at him napping.
Oh,
Or of course, it's a bunch of men, and I guess they'd want him to know that they found him attractive, so they would be opening the mail slot and inserting the genital apparatus. He was like, and he was like, he was just like gay, and he was like very, he's just like, and just let them know what they thought, and they'd slink off and everything. I was like, Joe, why are you continuing to nap on this couch with this front door like this? It could be anything.
Well, because obviously, he's sort of getting off on it a little bit.
He was a popular guy, but then he had many fine qualities. But he was fun because he was actually he would discuss all the weird paranormal stuff with me back. This is before the internet, when it was a lot harder to find people to discuss this type of stuff. So I was lucky. But there was the even in the Mothman case, there was the one young woman. I think she was a young married woman, and she was in like a basement apartment, and it had like weirdos come up to her door, and they'd slipped under a note that's like, "Little girly, I can get you yet," or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that. Yeah.
Oh, it's creepy. So
yeah, it is weird. It's like, because I remember, in Mothman, and what John Keel talks about is that for some reason, when you have what he noticed is when you have weird paranormal stuff, not only does it cluster, especially in a window area. Not only does it cluster, do different paranormal things cluster together, but other weird stuff clusters together, like serial murderers and just odd disappearances and certain kinds of child trafficking. And, Peter Levenda talks about that too in his Sinister Forces stuff.
I haven't read that.
Noticed that. Well, it's worth reading to see sort of his manner of thought. Some of the stuff needs to be updated a little bit, but he is very good at showing sort of various associations between these different kinds of things, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Kind of things.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, it's all just creepy. It's like creepy crap hangs out together.
Yeah.
He's been on the show before, Peter.
I know. We've interviewed him. You and I have interviewed him twice. I remember the last time we interviewed him I can't remember what book it was we were interviewing him over, but I remember I said to him, I've read every one of your books, which is true. And he said, I'm sorry.
He said Mabus was a thought form I created, and it eats my energy every show.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Sounds accurate.
Yeah. So we hear your pig squealing in the background, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I've been having to check for animals and stuff. I didn't know she went somewhere with the bulldogs, so making sure where the Chihuahua and the other one is. The Chihuahua's kind of sick today, so I'm having to watch her. And then the pig is always a pain in the ass. It's terrible. Like, this thing caught on somehow with people doing this pig thing, and I think every person that has a pig is probably tortured in some way because of the pig. If you have a backyard, maybe, but if you don't have a way,
pigs are bratty. They're bratty.
Yeah,
they are crazy, annoying. They just constantly make noise to make your heart and brain explode and get headaches. Like that's their sound fury of noise, psionic noise blast.
They are sweet though.
And they always want food every second.
Yeah.
I always see these pictures of people with their pigs. Like, no, you must have just fed them something. They will not stop eating. And then this one pisses on the floor sometimes when she gets mad at you.
Yeah.
So no one talks about that. There are things no one talks about with these things. They're really spies for orc raiders from Lord of the Rings in space coming to get us. They're spies. Some guy at Walmart. We grabbed it for $100. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and stop it. It's like Hitler pig. They're way too time consuming. It's probably worse than a baby. On the bright side, you can't
They're
eat
probably
them.
really tasty, though.
Yeah, I call this one honey baked ham.
Oh.
We went to this place, Jeffers.
But poor Stephanie's little moon and Cancer being all tender here.
Well, that's the terrible thing about pigs is that they're so, I mean, they are really intelligent and very soulful, and they have all this big personality, but at the same time, they're so delicious. It's kind
Yeah, it's like eating your own friend.
We went to this place, Jeffers in Dothan, and it's a pet supply place, and we brought the pig in, and there's like 8 women just loving pigs, just going crazy over our pig at one time. I don't know, it was just weird. Like a Twilight Zone episode.
She's a pretty cute pig, I gotta say.
She can be cute sometimes.
But it's like the grandparent syndrome, right? It's so great. Oh, you have the baby and it's so cute and it's making faces and blah, blah, blah. And then when they start to get fussy, you give back to the parents. You're doing the parent thing.
She nips on your heels when you're trying to pee for food and stuff, or harass you for food. But the worst thing is here is not knowing there's so much furniture she left behind. It's like we don't know if there's even storage places right now. We have to get pods. This lady left all this stuff here from her family. That's heirloom.
Well, you know what? If I were you, this is just me, and I'm being a rude person, but I would take your belongings and just leave the rest of her crap right there. If she's not going to deal with it, why should you?
Exactly.
Yeah. There's furniture that Christina wants because she don't have any furniture. But I mean, other than that, I know there'll be a lot of stuff.
Well, then take what you want. Just leave the rest of it. It's like
This is crazy for sure. But only thing I've been watching lately is Chucky. There's a new Chucky TV show. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
There's the guy that did Chucky's a gay dude. I didn't know that. Don Mancini. Chucky's not gay though. There's some gay characters in there. Chucky gives them shit. But
well, was Chucky heterosexual, or do we really know or care what Chucky is?
He's heterosexual.
Maybe he's aromantic.
With that
He's
Lily lady.
Tilly. I will just mow you down.
He's hetero with that Jennifer Tilly lady, but they do have a gay, bisexual, weird mutant son. They haven't showed him yet.
A weird mutant son.
Yeah, like a weird bi son. But it's pretty good. So there's only 8 episodes. The guy, did all the movies, of course, Child's Play. It's definitely fun to watch, but some of them are kind of violent for sure, watching him stick needles in people and stuff like that. But Jennifer Tilly's in it. That's the bride of Chucky. She's not Chucky right now, though, but she's regular. What was she in? She's been in a bunch of different stuff. I forget the name of that one movie with these lesbians and something. I forgot.
The lesbians.
These lesbians.
The whole thing was like a lesbian movie about these two women. Probably pick it up. Oh, Bound. It had her and Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly. It's called Bound.
Oh, I remember a lot of guys were super excited to have that movie come out and watch it.
It's like
in the privacy of their own home.
So stupid. The movie Showgirls was so terrible. It's horrible.
We're not even talking about paranormal stuff. We're just
BSing.
Showgirls. But I have a bunch of authors coming on. I have Joe R. Lansdale coming on next year. That's a big New York Times best-selling author, Joe R. Lansdale. He did Happen Leonard and all that stuff. And did the show Happen Leonard. That black guy, Michael K. Williams, passed recently, who played Leonard on that show. Ask him about that for sure. Michael K. Williams found him dead on the hair wands. Just sad because he's such a good actor. He was in a lot of HBO stuff. Loved him.
Yeah.
Good one.
I felt weird because I never really watched him much. My mom was a big fan of him because she likes The Wire. I guess he was on that. Or was it Oz? I don't know. She likes all these like kind of gritty.
He's in
I
The
don't
Wire.
know why.
Oz is
He's
pretty
like
good. My mom watches Oz.
Oh, she likes all that really gritty
It's
kind
like
of
prisons. Giant.
Like, Mom.
That's like
You know,
prisons and demons.
moms can startle you sometimes. You know, it's
It's
like my
really
mom
good.
startles me on occasion.
It's fun to watch, though. It's just prison craziness.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was a shame because he was not really old. But what kind of startled me about it is that he had that big scar on his face, and it actually, the top half of it looks like the top half of mine that I have from a car accident. So I was excited. It's like I could tell you, oh, that's what my scar looks like. Not that anyone cares, but when it's been around a long time, it's something you notice. But I don't know. Are we taking a top of the hour break or?
No, but if you need to,
Okay.
let me know. Me and Wham.
Oh no, that's fine. I just didn't want to like bring up some big involved topic and then I get like
No,
you know
we just go
forward.
through. We just go through.
Okay, perfect.
Just go through.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny you were talking about the creepy stuff because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area and I've grown up there, and so I've always been kind of interested in Lloyd Auerbach. He's like a parapsychology guy
Yeah.
in the area here.
Heard of him.
Yeah, he has had some. He's a very interesting guy because he has trained as like a classical parapsychologist from kind of like the academic scientific method perspective, but at the same time he's like a mentalist, and then he's always has this perspective when he's investigating weird things going on that you want to have like a team and you want to be focused on like the welfare of the witnesses. So the people that are there, what's going on, how to try and make it so that they are more comfortable with whatever is happening, as opposed to just like trying to get a sensational story or trying to figure out some scientific thing. It's like always focused on welfare. So he has like psychologists. He'll also work with mediums. And then he also does like a stage mentalism, which is when you like are cold reading people and stuff like that to look at like you're psychic. But he also acknowledges that lots of times when you're if you're doing stage magic or stage mentalism, it creates an environment where actual psi or telepathy or whatever can happen. But he's been having these Facebook lives like every other weekend where he'll just answer questions. He teaches college level parapsychology, so he'll have his students or other people. And so I was asking him about humor, and I thought it was a good insight because he said, if you're trying to convey something in whatever setting, college professor, junior high school, well, I guess now it's middle school teacher, church, podcast, whatever, your message is going to be more impactful. I don't know why I hate that word, but it's a good word. That it's going to be more impactful. People are going to remember it better if you can get people to feel an emotion along with the information, right? Yeah. And so he's saying, humor, it can be very important because that's a good emotion to cultivate. Because we were talking about all that creepy stuff before. And I think that this can happen sometimes, especially with people that they're starting, like they maybe had a weird experience and they start researching online and they're watching ghost hunting shows on the TV or something. And so a lot of this stuff really plays up the scary, spooky, creepy stuff,
right?
Which is a big part of it. But I think it could kind of get a momentum on its own. And so people start getting freaked out by the creepiness and then attaching that creepiness to their own experiences. And it kind of gets like a hall of mirrors where you can't get out of the whole creepy, freaked outness of it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that that was really smart of him to say that, is if you can bring some humor to it, I think a lot of people think you're not being serious, but it can, in my estimation, be very deadly serious. I'm going to go there because, people need to be able to get out of that, because at a certain point, you're just freaking yourself out and you're creating an environment that is helping to draw more of this stuff to you that's going to scare you even more.
Well, I think that to me is part of the genius of what David Lynch does.
Yeah.
Because his stuff, like his Twin Peaks stuff or Mulholland Drive, all of his stuff has these weird elements in it of where you have creepy or sinister or even paranormal or tragic, all of that sort of wound together with these interspersed with these moments of just bizarre humor, this ability to see the irony of things, like I don't know why, but I've been thinking about, I don't know if anybody here, either of you have seen or watched the Twin Peaks: The Return, that he did in 2017. Well, there's this one sequence in the early part of the series where they're going to eventually find the body of a librarian who, with another guy with whom she was having an affair, they stumbled on one of the portals through which the denizens of the Black Lodge and the White Lodge move, because these portals, everybody moves through them, right? So they stumble through them and unfortunately meet the bad guys, and so she ends up being killed essentially. And so they're going to end up finding her body, or at least part of her, actually just her head. They're going to find just her head, and they're going to find Briggs's body attached to her, and that becomes part of the whole story of what they're trying to unwind. Well, anyway, how they get to that point where they find her body is that there's this woman, just a plain everyday woman. They might have, David being who he was, he might have just hired an ordinary woman, who's supposed to be the neighbor of this person who they find. And she has noticed that there's a smell. And she's also supposed to take care of the woman's plants. And just the whole sort of way in which her interaction with the police is portrayed. She's kind of ditzy, and she's kind of ditzy, and she forgets initially that she even has the key to let the cops in. She doesn't remember it it goes on, and it's like one of those things where it goes on and on and on, and just kind of like in Mulholland Drive, if you've seen that movie, where there's this guy that's going to do a hit on these other guys and somebody else, and so he shoots them, but in shooting them, the bullet goes through him and through the wall and hits somebody else, and it becomes this bizarre comedy of errors where the hitman has to decide how many people he's going to kill before to eliminate witnesses before he can leave. And it's not funny, but it's hilarious at the same time. It's just like, what?
A lot of times with David Lynch, I'm just like, what in the hell is happening?
Well, and the thing about the woman I was telling you about, that you never see her again. The whole business of the woman's head that they find in there and everything, that becomes part of the story. With the Mulholland Drive, this hitman, you never do know what that's about. And it's never resolved. It's just sort of like inserted, as part of what's going on in this building that we're talking about. It's like, there's this building, all these things are happening, and this is happening over here. It's just so, but to me, it's like, if you think about it, that's exactly the way life really is.
That absurdity and randomness.
That's exactly how. It's just that we are so focused on our own stuff right where we're at that we don't think about like all the other stuff that's happening over here and all the other stuff that's happening over here. Which, if all of that were to be seen and known, our own sense of what's important would probably be altered significantly.
Yeah.
And
You know?
also, there's a scene where a kid, I think, gets hit by a truck and a light body comes out.
Oh yeah, that's also yeah.
That's my whole spiritual philosophy right there in one scene.
Well, and you know that's there are these two scenes in episode 6 of Twin Peaks: The Return that I can't watch. I have trouble watching. I watched them the first time that I went, but I can't watch them again. And one is that kid getting hit, you know, and I because you can kind of feel it coming. You can kind of feel something coming, right? And I remember when Alan and I were watching it, Alan turned to me and he said, "Does David kill kids in movies?" And I said he might. He's done it, and he did. He did. But the other one that's in there is at the if Jeffrey, if you remember, at the end of that same episode, Ike the Pike goes after a woman who is supposed to be killing somebody that the bad Cooper doesn't like. So and she's failed on doing the hit on Doogie. And so Ike the Pike has been sent to kill her, and he stabs people to death with ice picks. That's why he's called that. And they actually show him doing that. They show him kill, and I can't even watch it. It's like, I don't need to watch this. They show it like from her perspective, and it's like, oh, you know. And so whenever that comes on, if I'm rewatching, I just walk out of the room.
Yeah.
But as a moment of humor, you know, he kills her. And then as he's coming out, he sees another woman and has to go kill her. So, but then he comes out, you don't see that one. But then he comes out, and in killing her, he's like bent his pike. So he can't, it's like permanently damaged.
Yep.
His thing. And I mean, it's like one of the, it's done in such a way. I mean, Quentin Tarantino does things like that in his movies too, but he just doesn't do it as well. You know, where you have that sort of ironic twist with violence. I mean, the only movie I think he did it well in was Pulp Fiction. And even then, it wasn't done nearly as well as David does it. But yeah, because life is really screwed up and ironic and strange that way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that there's I was talking with someone about that today on Twitter, just kind of briefly, but it's like I don't know, I always think of kind of like Aleister Crowley versus Dion Fortune, because they seem so opposite, and it's kind of like Crowley is kind of always trying to stir things up and get things happening and poking at people and all that type of stuff, which I think, you know, there are reasons to do that, I suppose, but there's this other strain, and it seems a lot more boring. But the more I go through life and I find people who can actually stabilize things and calm stuff down and damp stuff down, that I value that skill a lot more, because things are going to get crazy in life anyway.
Right.
And I think Dion Fortune, in a lot of her work, she has a lot more focus on, you know, how to keep a cool head, how to see, you know, like the humor in situations, how to not get freaked out, and how to, you know, kind of shut things down and calm things down. And I think that, you know, if you're just kind of coming along in the community or just getting interested in stuff, of course, you want to see stuff happen, right? You know, you want to see the fireworks, you want to see a ghost or whatever.
No, you don't.
And, well,
no, you
that's
don't.
the thing. That's right.
Like when you really see stuff, you're like, ah! It scares the crap out of you.
I was listening recently to Astonishing Legends, and they had.
I thought you were going to say Astonishing Lesbians. It's like, tell me.
Astonishing Lesbians. I take off my dowdy shrug here to reveal my bagged out linen voluminous dress. It was the big reveal. But yeah, astonishing Legends, and I forget which one it was that they did. It just dropped recently, but they were talking to a radio host who did a stunt. Oh, it was a stunt with or more promotion thing. He is in that as a radio host in the town where the case that resulted in The Exorcist had happened. And he had found the house where that kid had been living when this stuff started to happen, that eventually ended in him having all these exorcisms happen to him. So he was having like a Halloween or something promotional, and he said, okay, you know, write me, that he had a bunch of listeners, write me, and we'll have, I don't know, like 10 or 12 people, and we'll go to the house on Halloween, and you can spend an hour. If you can spend an hour in the room, then you get some type of prize, right? And we'll record it. We'll have the support team there. We'll be recording it like this big radio thing. So all these people are there, and he had some of the tape from this. And there's one woman, and you hear her. They put her in the room, and she starts out. She's a little bit nervous. She actually says, "I think a Hail Mary or Our Father." And she's calming herself down, and then she starts to see, it looks like there's it's just a small room with like a window and a door, and she starts to see, it looks like there's lights or shadows coming from underneath the door out in the hallway. And like all of a sudden she's just like sheer panic and terror. She's like, come get me, I can't stay. And it's just like screaming and like hyperventilating, and you just hear like the sheer terror. And I'm like, that is what it's like when you see it. When this happens to you, what you're thinking would happen.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things I've heard that it's like when these things really hit you and really go, because lots of times it's someone who's been through something really awful or is going through something really awful, and it's not very fun, and you're feeling it at like full force. And so that's why I think, people want to go looking for this stuff, and they want to stir this stuff up. It's like, do you really want that? No, probably you don't. But it struck me because I listen, especially like over the years, I've just listened to a ton of stuff. I've seen a ton of ghost shows, and it's just so much of it's just like very boring and stuff. And it was like one of the few instances where it's like, yeah, this is what it's like. It reminded me, I wanted to share it online, just say, if you want to keep going with stuff. So that's why I think it's important for people to read some of the more boring, seemingly boring stuff about how to work with this type of thing in a way that gives it some structure, and it gives you some grounding and helps you to keep your balance and kind of calm things down. Because I don't know, it seems to me, I find a part of it is you just get this like emotions just suddenly burst out, like, 211 up to 11, as they would say in Spinal Tap. And it can be very difficult to maintain any type of conscious volition, really, when things are just so crazy so quick. On the plus side, or as where some people might be into this, is some of the I was listening to Whitley Strieber. He and Jeffrey Kripal wrote that book about supernatural stuff. I think it's called Supernatural.
Right.
They were doing kind of like a tandem interview with Jeff Mishlove on New Thinking Aloud, and Whitley Strieber was talking about his encounters with the manted alien lady on the cover of Communion.
Aliens, yeah.
Oh God! And he's just talking about like these sexual encounters, where it's just, again, the whole emotional sensation gets like up to 100. He's talking. I should have laughed, but apparently it's like a lot more like super exciting, like all of a sudden bammo.
Well, really, the mantids can apparently force you to come on here.
Yes, he was talking about his magnificent erection. All of a sudden, bammo. Like, okay, Whitley in the guest room.
Magnificent erection. Oh my God. That's like something I don't really want to visualize. With Whitley at all.
I feel happy for him, but it's kind of like you're trying to maintain a more scientific.
Me and Whitley Strieber have been in a fight before.
Well,
I know. He thinks that you're part of the Antichrist.
He was mean.
Well, and there's no call for that in my viewpoint.
Well, I admired his books and the movie with Christopher Walken. I've read all that stuff. I've seen it.
He's a heck of a writer on some of these things.
One day I was on his page and I wrote something making fun of God. What's the guy? that's on Coast to Coast with the space objects all the time. Has a white hair and a beard, white hair and a beard. Richard Hoagland. I
Oh
wrote
yeah.
something. Everything to this guy was like a Star Trek mothership. Our comet was a starship. I
Yeah.
wrote something on his on Examiner making fun of it, and Whitley seen it on his page. He goes, "This is helpful to humanity." I was like, "Cool, Whitley." Stryber, complimented me. But then 3 days later, I was blocked or something for something. So maybe he wasn't complimenting it, and I took it like he was. But anyway, I wrote him, and he goes, "Anybody that associates their name with the name Mabus, that's just crazy. That's the Antichrist." And
Yeah.
anyway, now he's
Mhm.
friends with Jeremy Vaney, another of my big enemies, and they work together. So I don't really keep an eye on what they're doing, but I've been in fights with them.
It's terrible. It's one of the terrible things that I think is not super helpful in our corner of the world of ideas here, which is that, I mean, not everyone has to get along to be able to, talk about ideas, or I think, I mean, like Jeremy Vaney, I think, has had some pretty interesting experiences as he talks about them and stuff. He tends to be, I think, just in my experience, a little quick on the draw to decide that he doesn't like someone personally, and therefore, you should be anathema. And I don't know that that's. I mean, I try and be maybe not so much that way. Whether I succeed or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think, if we could, because people could have interesting experiences or ideas, and you don't have to necessarily all be like, kumbaya, super friendly or something. But I think too, people are very keyed into a particular like worldview or religious viewpoint or something. Then they can get kind of talking with other people sometimes.
He and Jeremy used to do interviews and chat rooms together at the site, and it was only audio. I mean, it was only writing, typing, like old school AOL, and the guests would show up in the audience. But we did those for a good while, and they got very popular. But at one point, him and Jeff Ritzman were kind of rude to me and Jeremy said something about me making this my own little puppet show because he didn't like a guest that I had on, and they got rude with me. And they actually tried to get together and call me on a business call. They wanted to buy the Church of Mabus and merge it with Paratopia and make it one thing. And he offered me money, and I would work there. But the people on my staff didn't really like the name Paratopia. A gay guy said it sounded like a gay bar. And my web designer. But anyway, it just got nasty. I didn't do it. And they were
I forgot about that, but yeah, I remember when that was happening. Yeah,
kind of controlling ego. Jeff Ritzman died recently, didn't he? I heard that.
Yeah, I felt terrible because I think that Jeff had some pretty interesting ideas, and he really tried to do some interesting experiments. But I think that he was one of those people where the experiences that he had were really hard, and just in their basic. Whatever they were for him. And that I know he spoke about how, he and his wife would have like a lot of weird stuff happen in their home, like anomalous lights, or just like kind of like a matte black cube showing up in a corner of the room, kind of like sucking all the light into it, just like stuff like that. And it made it very difficult for them to have like friends or anything like that, because people would come over and see this stuff and get freaked out. And so it was very isolating for him. And then he was trying to do that Project Oculus, where he would try and have like cameras set up to try and document some of this phenomena, but he didn't have much luck with that because he was, it was one of those things where the phenomena was really trying to kind of evade his notice. So I think, for whatever reason, I just think that made it harder for him just generally to deal with people in the community and stuff. I mean, there can be a lot of just like any hobby group. I mean, my dad and my bonus mom and his wife are involved in they collect carnival glass, right? This is type of glass that got made like in the Depression and stuff.
Yeah.
The most mundane, I mean, it's very beautiful and a lot of fun, but it's like the most mundane thing. And they get all the sniping and backbiting in politics, even in the, like all these retired people in the carnival glass group. So any hobby group, I think.
I mean, there's people crab about anything.
It's true.
It's
But then yeah, but I think for Jeff Ritzmann, I think that he was trying to be more rigorous and have a more solid intellectual foundation for investigating these phenomena. But I just think the phenomena itself, for whatever reason, for him, it was just really hard. I don't know why. I think it's harder for some people than it is for others. And I don't know why that is. Like I was talking about Tui Snarder before, and I don't think it's as hard for her. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like, I think about my trajectory with this stuff. And I've had kind of a difficult life in some ways. I've had some difficult things happen to me. But then I think about somebody like Eugenia, who actually, from a childhood perspective, really didn't have that many bad things happen to her in the same way. And yet she had a very, very difficult adult life. Now, I mean, I think Eugenia had an undiagnosed, I think she was autistic, frankly, from my observation of her behavior, my talking to her, and just the sort of difficulties she had navigating certain types of human relationships. When she was in a military family that was very structured, and everything was very clear there. But when it came to her relating to regular people on an everyday level, she had a lot of problems with it, a lot of problems expressing herself. And if you just read her material, it reads very much like someone who is trying to deeply and profoundly understand the emotional lives of other people, because she sees them acting in different ways and is trying to guess what their motivations are. And it's hard, and she doesn't have a lot of empathy. I mean, in the direct sense. I mean, it's not that she wasn't compassionate or wasn't kind or anything like that, but she just didn't have any. She didn't have any like direct contact, emotional contact with people
that felt sense,
that was safe or that felt comfortable to her. But she also had a very powerful sexual drive, which she talks about from time to time, and which got her in no small amount of trouble from time to time. And she would, people would take advantage of her, for one thing. I think because she was on the spectrum, people would take advantage of her emotions because she was sort of guileless and would sort of just accept what people said. And, but she had a very difficult adulthood, and so her psychic experiences and these paranormal experiences, they kind of followed the kind of intense difficulty of that. And so the way she handled that was to really, really try to use her intellect to try to wrap and her art together. Interestingly enough, to sort of wrap both of those things around her experiences as different ways of trying to understand and express what was going on. But when you read her stuff, there's not a lot of what I would call deep emotional content, which is interesting. You know what I mean? You'd think that, with her output, and she was very creative, that she would be a very passionate person. Well, she was in a way, but it wasn't an emotional passion. Intellectual passion. It was a aesthetic passion. Passion. It was, but it's not terribly emotional. It's just interesting,
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to plug something a little bit. Just because we're talking about different people having this difficult or less difficult relationships with the kind of paranormal, and I have been following a guy on Twitter. If people are interested in Twitter, it's Perceptions Today. So it's like capital P Perceptions _today. And they've been hosting all these Twitter spaces on like consciousness and the paranormal. And they've always had a lot of kind of very intellectual and scientific resources about consciousness as it affects our lives. So he's not just focused on like telepathy or whatever, but how is your conscious affected by, let's say, chronic illness or extreme circumstances, or what's consciousness like of different animals and stuff, so that what does consciousness have to do with like precognition or reincarnation? So he's having these very interesting Twitter spaces, and they're going to be starting up a podcast too. And so Paul's the guy behind it, and he's a very interesting person because he's been having these nice Twitter spaces. He's pretty organized and has kind of that dad energy, so everyone stays on topic.
Dad. We just go all over the place.
Exactly. But it's refreshing because it keeps because it keeps it so that everyone can kind of get heard. And it's a very interesting authors, and he had Anthony Peake on there of Anthony Peake Consciousness Hour, talking for like 5 hours, talking to people and answering questions and stuff. He's coming on again. I'm going to be speaking on synchronicities January 6th, I think. But it's fun. If you have a phone, you can just listen. You don't have to say anything. And then he's going to be doing a podcast. So if people are interested in that, that's something you could check out. But I like it because it's a little less personality driven and more idea driven, and there's just a lot. I can't keep up with it. I think a part of it is because he has been interested in this for quite a while. He's not a spring chicken, and so he has a more organized and easier relationship with the whole idea of consciousness and kind of some of these weird extremes of it. And so I think there's a little less drama in it. But like you were talking about with these different people and their interactions with it, it's just interesting to me to see.
How do I find it again? How do I find it again?
It's on Twitter, and the account name is Perceptions Today. So it's capital P _ capital T for today. So Perceptions Today with underscore and capitalized. I think I can send you the link. But yeah, so, and people can pop in there, and then he's going to be doing a podcast too. So, but it's a lot of interesting stuff. There was a guy, I think it's Aaron Voot, was on recently, and he was talking about reincarnation. His parents, he's a younger person, I think. His parents had been researchers into reincarnation and written a book on it. And so he has a whole kind of generational, he's been steeped in this from the time he was small, and talking about that. But yeah, so people can poke around there and see. But it's kind of nice because it's unusual because it's a little lower drama, which is unusual for human beings, basically.
Lower, oh my God, lower drama.
A little lower.
Well, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
See, I'm saving it in my emails so I can find it later.
Yeah, it's fun. So.
Oh, and the only thing that I was going to talk about was this ghost thing that I've been working on. I've managed finally to get a bunch of different instances of footage of poltergeist activity, of orbs, and of figures, and audio, like voices. There's like several instances of actual voices to a guy. Well, if he's the archivist for a lot of the Pine Bush material, and he helped me write the Pine Bush case study in my book. But he also is a sound engineer for an NBC affiliate.
Oh,
and has a couple of friends who also work with him at the affiliate, that do audio and video, and so they are taking these pieces of CCTV footage, and they are subjecting them to different types of tests and enhancing them, and they have found some interesting things. Like, for example, once there was this one recording that had a sound. What you see is, when you first see it, what you see is something is has caused the motion detector to fire. So the camera goes on. And then you see a light come on in a room because it's at night. It's in the middle of the night. And then you hear a voice. And the voice seems to say something like, "Are you here?" or "Anybody here?" You can't really tell exactly. And then the motion detector, it tries to focus on something that seems to be coming out of that room where the light came on and then goes off. But it seems to be trying to focus on something that's coming out of the room, sort of about maybe a foot or two off the ground. But you can't really see it. You can
It's
only
a gnome.
yeah, no, there's no dog in there or anything. But you can't really see it because it's dark. Well, what he did was they went for a long time. We couldn't figure out, is that Austin's voice? Because Austin wasn't there. Is that Ed's voice, one of the old trainers? But it turns out he wasn't there either. And this happened like at 1 a.m. or something, like when everybody was gone. And so, but when they enhanced the video and cleaned up the sound, you can hear a voice. Not only can you hear a voice very clearly saying something, and it's a male voice, but underneath it, you could hear another voice. And you can also hear this weird metallic pinging sound that you did not hear before. And that pinging sound shows up in several other videos where there's sound. And they've never been able to identify like what that pinging sound is. It doesn't sound normal, basically. So when the video engineers looked at it and the audio engineers looked at it, what my friend was like, he's like, yeah, I mean, and he showed me they make this kind of sound thing.
Yeah.
All the sound waves, whether we can hear them or not, they may be below the level of our ability
human hearing, yeah,
but they may have been picked up by the microphone. Yeah. And so what you see the sound of the voice and then the sound of the other voice. So it confirms there's something there, that, something was heard. Yeah. But then you hear this pinging noise, and underneath the pinging noise, below the level of our ability to hear, there's all this other stuff going on. And so he decided that that's really interesting. So he's, but anyway, so there's something really interesting going on there. And I'm just really happy that I've got somebody that's professional looking at this footage.
Oh, that's super cool. I remember reading Colin Wilson's book Poltergeist a billion years ago. I love that book. But he's talking about a poltergeist instance, and they would have what they called the grand piano crash sound, which is it sounds like you have a piano or something. It's a huge crash sound. And other knockings and stuff. And like you were saying, they were able to record some of these sounds. And then when you have a sound engineer look at them, they don't have the kind of start and stop like a normal sound would have. Like if you were just knocking stuff around, it's like stopping and starting really abruptly. So you can have these kind of artifacts that you can find by looking at the sound waves through these analyses and see that there are abnormal to what you would expect. It's weird. You were talking about how they were thinking it sounded a little bit like the voices of the guys who worked there.
But what was interesting is once it was enhanced, it was very clear it was neither one of their voices.
Yeah.
It was very clear. But because it was you had to clean it up first.
Because they could do voice prints and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird.
And he's also found some audio in a couple of other pieces of CCTV where we can't hear the audio. In other words, when I just listen to it, I can't hear any audio there. But they've been able to enhance and pick up that there's some kind of sound thing going on. It's like a pulsing. It's also he says, because he's a sound engineer, so his sound, he's listening to it with headphones and he knows how to listen to it. And he says that he thinks he can hear certain types of voices in that. but he needs his friends to listen too. I can't hear it, but it's at a low level. And I've lost 40% of my hearing in my left ear, so I'm not really good at hearing stuff like that anyway. But so it is interesting. I mean, one of the pieces that they're looking at right now is something that happened during the day where this one camera picks up this figure that appears to be like a shadow figure that is, and it's very clear, a shadow figure that appears to be like looking into the yoga room and kind of peering in. And at first, one of the video guys was saying, well, it is possible for some of these security cameras to sort of have shadows in them, to record former images of other things. And the only problem with that is that the story behind this picture is that this was taken or occurred like literally as Austin was preparing to close up the shop for COVID. I mean, he had just gotten the call from the Ulster County Board of Health to tell him that he needed to close. So he was doing his final cleaning. The room is just up on top of the landing where it was, and he was down at the bottom of the stairs. And from the bottom of the stairs, if you're tall enough, I'm not, he's taller than I am, you could actually see the door in question, or at least part of the door in question. And he was cleaning, and he got pinged on his phone that the camera up there was picking up movement. And he was like, what could possibly be up there? Because I just was up there cleaning the floor. So like, what could possibly be up there? So he looks, and he sees that figure in real time. He sees it, and then he looks up to see if, because it would, the way the figure is, it would be tall enough that he could see it. He doesn't see anything.
Yeah.
And so it's like in real time he's getting pinged that something's going on up there, but he can't physically see something that then shows up on the camera.
Well, that's the difference between, what our human senses can pick up and these various instruments. That's really trippy. That's really wild. It's interesting too, because as everyone knows, I'm a bird watcher, and I know very little about it, but I've known, you can do a lot of analysis of birdsong and chips and things like that with audio recording, and you can have enhancements or different types of what they call it, parabolic microphones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so on to monitor birds, and you can identify birds by certain bird species. The individuals, you can identify their calls by sound printing that way too. So I think it can reveal a lot of information. Like if you're saying, if there's a sound engineer, but it's interesting too, because our hearing does decrease as we age. It was funny, I heard about this study a billion years ago, because birders were noticing that certain you can do bird censuses where you go out in certain areas and you count however many birds of whatever species that you encounter. So this can be visual sightings. It can also be by ear. And they would notice, and it's a lot easier to count birds by ear in many circumstances, because you don't, they're trying to hide from you, but they make noise, so you can, identify them that way.
Yeah. Screw humans.
Yeah. So they would notice that people's bird watchers who had been doing this for a number of years, their numbers would decline over time. Now, part of this is real, but part of it is the fact that when you get to be around 30, your hearing starts to fall off, and so you don't hear as many of the chips or songs and stuff as you did when you were younger. And there's a particular bird called a ruby-crowned kinglet, and they're adorable little tiny birds, very active, kind of olive drab with these huge eyes. They flick around and they eat bugs in the trees. And they're so interesting to me because you can really tell that you can't hear things, because they have a song that's like an ascending scale. They go, they go up, and then they come. but you'll miss the top part. You'll be able to see the beak and the throat. Actually, it's more kind of like this, singing, and you'll hear and you can't hear the top part, right? Because it goes right outside of your range of hearing. So it's funny because you don't usually have it so blatant to yourself that there's stuff I can't hear, because you figure you don't hear it, it doesn't exist, right?
Well, but it's like what I talk about in my book, where there's that instance in front of that stump where we've got a FLIR like recording an orb that's coming out of the stump towards us and floating about 4 inches above the ground, and we can't see it with our naked eye.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
You can't see it with our naked eye, but it's on the FLIR. You're like, I mean, that was like the trippiest thing I've ever experienced. We were just like, whoa, and then like I say in the book, it's like there was right next to it, there was that little plant that was just like freaking out. It was just like wiggling like this. And then I remembered that when my Micmac teacher said, now, if you see a plant doing that, that means there's a little person right there.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I remember I said to the person I was with, I said, we need to leave this alone. So I put some tobacco down, and we backed off. We did not turn our backs on it. We backed off and waited till we were gone and, down a ways. And then we turned around and we were like, okay, that was interesting. So I find it really interesting, but it goes back to what we were saying before, is that, you think you want to experience this stuff. And of course, I guess on a certain level, we all do, those of us who are interested in it. But when you actually encounter it, the uncanniness of it, because it's never what you expect. It's never what you expect. It's never where you expect. And so it's not like you can control your reaction to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I was I don't have the reference to mine, but there was some type of group, and they were more academically oriented. And several years ago, they had done a longitudinal study of several different mediums, people who have communication with the dead, and they had taken like oral histories of them, like from childhood and developing their abilities. It was the first, I think they had some questions as prompts, it was the first experience you had. How did your family react to it and handle it with you? Did you have like a religious or social support for these abilities? Did you have any training? All this type of stuff. And so it was very interesting. And they came to the conclusion of this that I thought it was a little bit rosy, that if people had supportive social structures in place, that they were not going to have a lot of the trauma or emotional upset involved in encountering these type of things. Mm-hmm. Which I think is true to an extent, because there was one instance there, and it really struck me. It was a little girl, the first mediumistic experience that she had of a contact with a dead person. She had an impression of I think she saw a pirate, and it was like he was kind of decomposing with water, and she could smell the rotting flesh. Yeah. So obviously this is very traumatic and stressful and upsetting to her, especially being a little girl, and she had a very non-supportive family environment too, which made it worse. So they were kind of putting the spin on it of this, like, well, if she'd had a supportive family. I'm like, no. Because when I was in my 30s, and I'd already had some encounters with dead people, actually for over 10 years at that point. I was living at a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center. I had people around me who were very adept at dealing with all type of weirdness that I could call upon. Varying traditions, and I'd been in kind of a spiritual meditation study group of a small number of women, and one of the women had died of cancer, and she was only like in her very early 40s, and she had a young daughter, and she was fighting it tooth and nail, and she was very selfish with how she would interact with other people and their energy, because her big goal was to stay there and raise her daughter, who was young. So I can't completely falter for it, although it was wrong. Anyway, so I started to be in my little room in the meditation center. I would feel her presence and the smell of rotting flesh. And even being a grown-ass woman with experience and everything, it's going to creep you out, and you're going to get freaked.
It's extremely.
It is. It is
extremely unnerving.
Even when you know that experience, you have a plan, you have many people who can help you. It's still.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think when I finally concluded about why that was so, is because I think our bodies really sort of know that we're supposed to be focused here.
Yeah.
And it's a fear reaction. Your body is encountering something that it doesn't understand, that you're not in control of, and so it just simply reacts. There's not a lot of it's completely limbic. I mean, that's how I experience it. There's no rational thought there. It's just kind of like, I don't know.
It's kind of like if you have a nice big bowl of ice cream. It's not like a thought thing. It's just like, wow, this is delicious.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like that, but it's not delicious.
Except that it's scary. It's uncanny.
Yeah.
I mean, it is also interesting, and in the kind of intrusive experiences that I've had, which I've talked about on the show, I do find it interesting that in the intrusive experiences I've had, like where it's been clear that somebody has been in the room or something like that, or that I get mad. And that in that moment, I have no fear of it at all. It's kind of like, get out of my house. I mean, do not manifest. If you can't be a polite person and manifest the same way everybody else does at the same time, don't do it. You know what I mean? It's really funny. But in that moment, I'm not mad. I'm not scared at all. So I'm either like terrified of it or I'm really pissed off. Those are like my two modes, Okay, I'm going to let you guys talk. Jeffrey's hardly said anything. I've got to go potty. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm tired, so I've got to move all this crap out of here. But anyway, the last few nights I've had I'd go out and take the garbage or whatever, and I'd see strange shooting stars that were pretty interesting.
Oh.
And just the fact that they happened right when I came out was kind of neat. One was a star that shot. It was like a star, but it was shooting straight through space and vanished. Most shooting stars fall, but this one was like a straight line. And then another big one I saw, and this may be in a meteor, something big and green hit the atmosphere and went down into the woods. So that was just peeking outside. Lately, I can see weird stars traveling in the night in different directions and things like that. Another big one I saw was a giant triangle, and I don't know what that was, but it might have been a stealth kind of government vehicle, but it was way up in space. But I've noticed after praying and stuff, I've had a lot of weird shooting star situations, and it's always weird because they happen when I'm only going out for like 2 minutes or something for the garbage, and there it is.
Yeah, that's a weird. I had a weird thing. Was about a year ago. My husband Anthony ended up. He started having kidney stones. Then he was passing them, and I had I had a weird experience where he I forget. I was talking with someone online, and I was talking about there's a song by the group XTC called "Then She Appeared," and it's about like the divine feminine. But one of the lines is a brittle shooting star that dropped in my lap. Right? It's about shooting stars.
Yeah.
Actually, that's not really what it's about. It's about what Whitley Strieber was talking about, but using the metaphor of a shooting star, right?
Doing alien chicks. Wow.
But anyway, so I was thinking about this song, and I was actually listening to it as I was out walking, and just as around the time that line came up on this song as I was listening to it as I was out walking at night. I saw this really brilliant shooting star. It was like in 3 different, like red, white, and blue, and very dramatic. And I was like, wow, that's kind of a big coincidence, because they actually mention the tricolor in the same song, Red, White, and Blue, right? The French flag.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because that night, my poor husband ended up passing a bunch of stones. And I thought that's weird, because it's the same. It's like stones that are like making a big commotion when they're coming out.
It hurts.
So it's like,
it hurts.
Yeah. So it was like a weird kind of thing. It's like you have this like very mundane thing, and then this song talking about it, but then you also see these great shootings. So it's like, I don't know what it is about these shooting stars. I love them. I love meteors. And then I also love comets. We actually have a comet Leonard, which is supposed to be visible coming up in a couple
I
weeks.
heard about that.
I think that's a great name for a comet, Leonard. It's so easy to remember.
Some of the other names over here, Bertha for the hurricanes and weird stuff. Like, I'll take Leonard any day.
Bertha is actually my I've used that name for a number of years, because when I go to get coffee, it's like you go to some place and they're like, okay, do you want it hot? Do you want it cold? Do you want soy milk or 0% milk, or we have 2% milk, or we have goat milk? And it's, you know what? I want a coffee.
Bertha.
Then they start asking Stephanie, well, is that with a F or a PH, or do you have a IE on the end or a Y? And finally I'm just like, I don't. So finally I said Bertha, and no one asked me how to spell it. And then I could just get my...
It's funny how many paranormal conversations I've had with like an air conditioning man that came here, like the guy that dropped off the furniture for the hospice, like when the pet people came here to do the spade with the surgery. There was a native named Bruno. Me and him had all these talks about ancient aliens, and he showed me his book in this car by Dean Radin about consciousness and telepathy.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's just strange how just about anybody that comes here, I can like boringly just say, hey, I do a show, and next thing you know, we're talking about ancient aliens or whatever, and I give them the link. I do that a lot. It's funny how they definitely know a lot more than you would think, because they're just like country delivery dudes or whatever, so you wouldn't think it, but they do. They surprise me, and that Bruno guy
it's like
surprised
Peter
me.
Lavenda said, it's like you're creating this thought form, and it's like drawing these people are being drawn in one way or the other.
Yeah, for sure.
So
that native had a
Dean
Radin book. I have one of his books, but it's like this big dude that's telepathy and remote view and all this stuff, and gave him a link, and it was pretty neat. But I've had that happen a lot. It's always fun when that happens, for sure. When you just find someone to talk to.
No, like you say, it's like completely unexpected, because you're kind of out, when the boonies just in a regular area. And then just, people that happen to come up, and, because Dean Radin is hardly like entry level to the paranormal.
Yeah, it's big time.
Yeah. So that's cool. He's actually just across in Petaluma over here at the Ions, I think, which is just a while from here.
There's one guy, Courtney Brown, asked to come on the show, but he ignored me. He's in Georgia Emory University and wrote these weird books on remote viewing, cosmic explorers and stuff. And in the books, they're dead serious that they're remote viewing reptilian bases and stuff. And this dude still, I guess, works at this doctor's office. But there's like remote viewing lizard bases in every one of his books, and he's dead serious. He's dead, which maybe he's crazy as hell. I don't know, but still pretty interesting.
You would think the reptilian bases would have like psychic shields against remote viewing by people that work in dentist office or something.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not as advanced as we think.
Yeah. Who knows? It may be full of it. You just don't know, but it's just so funny.
Well, it's fun to listen to. I mean, if nothing else, there's a certain element where it's just like, I just want to hear a weird story,
Yeah.
But I don't know.
It's definitely crazy. Next week. I was just going to say, next week, Stephanie Redfeather, she has these empath cards, Native American lady. Talking about native stuff, for sure.
That's really nice.
Yeah, we had another native guy on Luke Blue Eagle. He was about crystals and stuff, and that was pretty good. And And of course, Jesus. You really say it, Jesus. That's how you say. I thought Jesus, but it's really Jesus. Jesus Payon. It's funny. He also knows those two little dwarfs from Reservation Dogs, Funny Bone and Little Mike. That's these little natives that dance and do rain dances. They're on Reservation Dogs, but he's friends with those guys, and all three of their names are Jesus. Jesus. But I don't know if the dwarfs are Jesus or Jesus, but Jesus.
It's the Holy Trinity.
It's the Holy Trinity. It's something for sure. I'd like to hang out with those dudes, but they're on Reservation Dogs. They got the same guy that did What We Do in the Shadows, that show. But Stephanie saves the show.
Stephanie saves the show. And we only say 2 or 3 F-bombs.
That's right.
Yeah, Jeffrey started us out with the F-bombs.
Yeah, by accident. Joe here.
It just comes right out.
Well, at least we didn't. No one farted on air, so we have that going for us.
Well, not that you heard.
Sorry.
That was just a duck call.
That's a duck call. That's great.
We're barking spiders.
He's so sorry. He's so sorry. But anyways, the doctor at the end of the month, Kimberly McGeorge, a lot of paranormal stuff. I know that's the last guest of the year, and then we go on break till January 7th, which hopefully I'll be moving by then and not stuck here with no electricity or power in some weird position.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
So weird is I'm supposed to talk to the real estate guy. They wrote me today, "If you talking to the real estate guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, I talked to him this morning. I haven't said a word to him." Like, I'm just pretending like I'm not talking to him, ignoring him. So the more you get him to do, everyone tells me to ignore him.
Yeah.
Sure, it'll blow up sooner or later, or he'll come by. It's just awkward. All right, everybody. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Wham. Thanks, Super Joe.
Thank you. I really had a fun time. It was nice being able to catch up with you guys.
I feel beat up, so I'm glad y'all are here.
Yeah.
We'll catch up more tomorrow.
That's right.
What are y'all doing tomorrow? Y'all
We're just having
a private girl talk.
A little private girl talk.
Y'all send some chi my way, because I feel like somebody beat my ass.
We will send you good vibes.
Yeah.
And then I took that weird stuff that for scabies, and I was like the Trumpelgooch stuff. Oh my god.
The Trumpelgooch stuff.
It's like ivermectin or whatever. Last time I'll ever do that, but I do have the scabies, so I did it one time.
Some of those medicines, those treatments are rough, man. Oof.
It was weird. I woke up and everything was flashing, and I threw up. And the screen would turn black and then white. Like, it did visual weirdness to my eyes.
That's wild. That's wild.
JoJo probably does it every day, so he knows. I'm with the Trumpelgooches now. I'm shooting this shit up.
Join your team.
I will never do it again. Never. All right, y'all have a good weekend.
You too.
Take care.
I hope the scabies are dead, though. All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.